You're listening to WCOM LP 103.5 FM Carborough and Chapel Hill. It's a Tuesday, it's 5 o'clock, and that only means one thing. It's time for another round of Snarky Faith with your host, Stuart Deloney. This is a space where we irreverently wrestle through life, culture, and spirituality, all with our heads in the clouds, our tongues in our cheeks, our hearts in our sleeves, and our feet on the ground. At Snarky Faith, the questions or even the answers are never the point. It's all about the conversation. So here's your host, Stuart Deloney.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to another round of Snarky Faith Radio. I'm your host, Stuart Deloney. Joining me, as always, is my trusted co-host, Ben Triplett. Ben, as we have been sitting here for a little while, and way before I hit the record button, we are talking about judgment today. Yeah. It's not a type
Judgement.
Yeah, it's something you eat after dinner.
Mr.
I've had a judgment, and now my breath smells better.
His honor judgment.
Yes.
That's like an awful joke. I'm sorry.
No. We're full of them. No,
level.
I would need a judgment because we're also drinking. It just happens that we are now. Is it honest for us to say that we're slumming it right now with our beverages of choice that we're drinking here?
Pretty much.
And in our portable studio.
Yeah.
We are drinking, and I will admit this, and this is something that I would judge me on for drinking. But we're meeting in a place that the only coffee we could find was Old Folgers.
Like opened half full container.
Yeah.
Who knows how long it's been sitting?
Yeah, it's almost like we're sharing needles right now just to get through the show.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
very relevant to me because I've been watching The Wire. So
this isn't even good stuff that we're using. It's kind of like, have you ever
it's like been cut with baking soda.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I think this is going to be a stream of consciousness show based upon where we are both at. But it reminded me of, I took, this is, good Lord, it's probably been 10 years. I took a group of youth to do a missions project down in Skid Row in Los Angeles. And we had one kid that was trying to, these are all teenagers, bad, rough backgrounds, etc. Loved them all. They were great kids, though they were rough around the edges. And one of them was trying to quit smoking on the trip. And so he didn't bring any cigarettes. And so he would be the guy that would walk around looking at ashtrays.
For butts.
Yeah, just to do that. And then
we're on the ground or something.
Which actually, it disgusted me, but I was like, if that's what you need to do to get by, because I'm not buying you any. But we're down on Skid Row. You've got, again, it's a few miles of homeless folks. Super sad situation. I'm not trying to make light of it, but I will make light of our story for being the white people down in a totally area where we were outnumbered. And actually it was really wonderful, eye-opening, great work, etc. That will be my preface to it. But so he's walking around and bought random cigarettes off of guys on the street, which that scared the crap out of me when he comes back and is like, dude, I scored all this for 75 cents.
Oh gosh.
And I was just like, I would probably throw that away because I'm not really sure what it's laced with.
Yeah.
When you're buying them separately.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But I don't know.
It's like going trick-or-treating and eating the apples because they could have razor blades in them.
You just eat around the razor blade.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And then you're like, hey, free razor blade.
That's true.
Hey.
Now I can shave.
Score! But it also, it reminds me too, because you and I have a friend that runs a convenience store that shall be unnamed. That is somewhere in the state of North Carolina. And I've hung out with him for a whole day, helping him out to work. And I'm not going to say, but he does. He sells singles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he will.
Interesting.
Yeah, because that's the clientele.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Yeah, people come in to buy 2 cigarettes and leave.
Huh.
Because he figured out
they're really expensive now.
So he makes more money off selling them separately than selling them by the pack to certain folk. So
it's like renting a hotel room by the hour.
Oh, dirty. Yeah, without changing the sheets.
There are going to be so many references in this show.
Okay, so let's lay this out. So the whole idea, we wanted to be talking through this whole concept, which is, I think in most of our shows, we talk around this idea, but the fact that Christians and judgment go hand in hand and shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of those, you ever knew people in high school that you were dating and you're like, this is not going to end well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the whole thing of the Christian judgment courtship that happens where you're like, why? This is not a good relationship. It's not going to last very long. Or it's just going to be really messy and they'll have really ugly kids.
Oh.
And they do.
Judgment.
It was.
Hashtag judgment.
But on top of this, and so I want to give you, Ben, I want to give you a safe space here today. Okay. You told me it was one of your dreams on our show to start working in really good analogies. Or wait, maybe not really good is the word, but very far out or very creative or something like.
Or just throwing out analogies.
Yeah, throwing out analogies and trying to push them as far as you can.
More of it was, which is, this is how most of my ideas come about. Just something random pops into my head and I'm like, we should do this. And I only have like one example or one thing to stand on.
Mm-hmm.
And then generally like a week down the road, it just goes by the wayside and I have some other idea in my head.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. We'll see.
Which reminds me.
Oh, you want me to throw out the analogy I was thinking of?
No. Here's the ground rules for this, for our talk today. I think it needs to, I don't want to set it up to be like analogy number 1. Here we go. It needs to be peppered in.
We need to, I was going to try that. We should have like a sound effect for it though.
Maybe
that's forthcoming.
Or you just slide it in
Boop.
and nobody notices until like 30 seconds later. You're like, oh, he's doing it again. Either with an eye roll or like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works, but yeah. So you're locked and loaded and ready to be a pepper grinder shaker.
It's just a very southern thing to like throw in a really weird analogy, right?
Yeah, I would.
Maybe a mountain. I'm from the foothills mountain area of North Carolina.
The foothills of the foothills.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, technically, I guess it is the foothills of the foothills.
I think you like to paint yourself as being a little bit more red than you are.
I don't know. My parents are from Wilkes County, and it's like the birthplace of NASCAR because it's also the birthplace of moonshine. Or one of the great like areas of moonshine.
Is there really a birthplace of moonshine?
I mean, probably. I'm sure that like Kentucky and other states have their own claim to birthplace of moonshine. But
that's true. There's deeper south than here.
The story yeah, that's true. But let me just say, where I grew up, I knew a guy who lived in a chicken coop. That was his house. So, I mean, no judgment. Country. Yeah, no judgment.
Like with the chickens or like he kicked them out?
That's how it's not funny. Like it's actually kind of sad because that's just
Did he die of salmonella?
But no. But I mean, that was his house. Sorry. So
yeah.
And no, I knew people that like only had porta-john or the
outhouse,
yeah. And not porta-john.
Yeah.
That would be a little nice.
Outhouses, they're
no
not
running water.
They're not pleasant.
I mean, I didn't grow up like in dire straits or anything, but I mean, it was pretty country.
If you've ever like the hard thing about, and I don't even know how we've gotten off onto this tangent of talking about porta potties.
No judgment.
But okay, thank you. I'll keep going with that. But if you've ever been around, because it's essentially a pit toilet. If you've ever been around, well, I mean. It depends. Are you talking about like the plastic ones that people come and empty out every once in a while? Or you're actually talking about like I'm digging a hole in the ground.
I mean, they had like an outhouse.
Yeah.
Wood shack with a hole in a board.
And my really only experiences with those are like going through the backcountry where they have those on trails in areas that they don't always, because really you don't necessarily clean them out. No. You just move the hole.
Yeah.
And then move like the little structure.
Yeah.
And sometimes
and all sorts of things nest in there.
Well, one thing like when we, yes. How far to go with this story?
Yeah, we're like way off the reservation.
Well, what typically happens is what I learned about like the whole Parks and Rec department, like in Washington State for like the whole Parks department, what they would do is they really maintained the first mile of every trail very well, because it was like
switch.
No, it wasn't that. It was simply like about 90% of the folks that actually went onto kind of state grounds to be able to hike and do everything else like that. They did it essentially was within a mile and turned around and came back. Gotcha. And so if you were going much further than that, you would experience other stuff and experience stuff that probably needed to be fixed or changed or moved. Because yes, there were times where we were in the middle of the backcountry, and you know, I just learned once you open the porta potty, you just leave it open and kick it a few times to make sure bugs and stuff fly out. Because otherwise, if
Yep.
you sit down on it, they're munching areas that never need to be munched on.
Yeah. Oh,
That
yeah.
And
You don't just walk into a ported, or shoot, I keep calling them that, an
so
outhouse.
that's your
sit down.
snarky faith tip of the day. If you open the porta potty, kick it around, let it clear out, and then
Don't kick it over, but
No, not kick it over.
kick it around.
Well,
I mean, unless
I've seen stuff where people
I used to do that too.
tip it over with someone inside of it.
No, no one was inside, but it's
Just-
almost more mean because the people who are actually using them and working
Yeah.
in the area don't have anywhere to use the bathroom for a while. So
Yeah, I've never
so
officially.
don't do that.
I've
children.
never officially tipped one over. We've gotten one like 3/4 over with someone that we knew that was in it, and we locked the door while they were in it. I mean, we weren't going to be as mean to like actually tip it over because we didn't want them to be covered in whatever that blue sauce is.
Oh, yeah.
But we would do it to where
Doo-doo
they're
sauce.
screaming and terrified on the inside. Because I mean, if you get like 2 or 3 guys and you get a good running start and you kind of all jump at the
yeah.
same time, you can
Oh, yeah.
you can put the fear of God into somebody that's sitting on a potty. So yes, how far we've gone from talking about
Yeah,
judgment.
We're further than a mile on that trail
We-
right
we-
now. We're getting to some busted stuff.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
That
so
was a pretty good analogy.
hey, you can't point it out. You got to
Oh,
slide
I'm
it in.
sorry.
Remember, it's got to be all subtle.
and it does. I don't want it to be a
though
good
I
analogy.
even though I do like the congratulatory nature of it.
That's true.
Or you throw it
back
in there.
patting.
Hey,
Maybe the
hey,
sound effect can be like a patting of the back.
Yeah, you were like, hey, way to go, Ben. Thanks, Ben. That was amazing, Ben. I know Ben.
Stop judging me.
It's okay, so we are going to be talking through 2 different articles I'd found recently. One of them is called Pope Francis Reminds Catholics Why Judging Others Isn't Christian. And this is by Antonio Bloomberg. And the other one is Why Are Christians So Judgmental by Michael Hidalgo. And so both of these, we're going to kind of bounce around talking about this weird incestuous nature that happens between Christians and being a bunch of a-holes a lot of time, because I can say that because I don't think I just broke any FCC rules. But I feel like that's the nicest way of putting it. And we've seen a bunch of stuff, and this isn't simply just with what's been going on with politics lately, which really is kind of like a drumbeat to get the Christian jerks out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Much like, I don't know. I had
No
an analogy
analogy?
going. I had one. I mean, it's kind of like the cockroaches coming out, but I don't know. That's, I don't have your
Flip
skills.
the light on
I
and
don't have. Yeah, but the opposite of that.
Okay.
So it's kind of like leaving a ham sandwich in the dark. I don't even know.
Oh,
Okay, never
that's
mind.
awesome. Yes.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay,
That was great.
You're going to do better than me on that one. So no, but what it tends to happen, especially with politics, is we begin to see like the ugly heads like rear themselves of the loud Christians with this stuff happening. We see stuff with Orlando, the Orlando shooting. We see the ugliness come out from Christians about that. I'm not saying everybody. Again, we're not trying to overly generalize, but there are a large group of subset of Christians that love to judge, either whether it be online, when they hang out with each other, from pulpits and everything else, where it gets really, really ugly. And what begins to happen is, and I will go as far to say this, and you may have a good analogy for this one, but it pits Christians in a place that there really is no Christ. They're just
Explain further.
they're like Ristons. Like you kind of like take the Christ out of the. Well, meaning that
gotcha.
once you get to kind of this standpoint of being able to stand in a judgmental space and begin to condemn and begin to come down and begin to be nasty about other groups of people, whoever the other is, it doesn't even matter in the situation. It really puts them in a situation where Jesus isn't even standing near them, and so I feel like they become. Christian becomes
they are the Jesus at that point.
Who?
The people who are judging.
I mean, they're
Because
acting
then-
like the Jesus, but they're not acting like Jesus.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Thank you for making that clarification. It's almost like you have put yourself in that position.
You are in a godlike position.
Right. So you don't. And I think the thing that's very dangerous about that is you no longer are focused at all on yourself.
True.
You're looking past anything in yourself, and I mean it's like the splinter and the plank.
Yeah, or it's grace and humility. What are those things anymore? We don't need them.
Yeah.
Type of a thing. And I think that again, if you've been listening to the show for any period of time, I mean, one of our things is trying to recontextualize the words of Jesus and what it means to be a follower of Jesus, because in many ways we feel like these things have been stolen in the name of Christianity and run awry and run into many other places where they shouldn't have gone. But they still do it using the same term, being Christians. But yeah.
So can I pull in a little Nietzsche?
Have I ever stopped you before?
Because this is no. And just speaking of Nietzsche, you have shaved your mustache, which is really sad to me. But I did notice that before, but I figured I'd tie that in
2 months
right
ago.
now. Our listeners cannot see that you have shaved your mustache.
They can tell that I sound different because I don't have like the
no longer
or whatever sound I was. No, it is funny because it was like when I'd grown it out and my kids hated it, and then I shaved it and they're like, "Where is it?
Where did it go?
Yeah, we liked it. I don't know."
Yeah, but I don't know. Nietzsche. This is like Nietzsche's one of his big things. I guess one of his biggest topics is this idea of the way that Judeo-Christianity has taken, in his view, and especially I think in his like context, was about people who could not do for themselves, people who would not were I guess scared to take like risks and to kind of like act and see how far they could go to their limits in doing. And so what they would do is they kind of went the opposite direction of these like forces that make people feel like they can't do. And so what you're doing is you're like turning doing on its head and saying, you know, basically in making these sort of judgment moves, you are keeping people from being able to like be their best self. And so he would call judgment like the power of the weak. It's like the way that the weak can become strong. Because they can't do for themselves. It's funny, and every time I think about this, I always think of that quote, and this is totally going to offend like teachers, so I don't mean for it to be that way at all. I really do respect teachers, but that quote of like those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach Jim. I'm just joking. But yeah, it also makes me think of a Method Man said once. I don't think I can say the actual word, but
go for it.
A rap critic.
Yes.
Can I say that?
Yeah, I mean, we like to hyphenate our swearing around here, so yeah.
He talks about it while I live it. He talks about it while I live it. So I don't know. There's this sort of disconnect between people who can do and then people who are like on the outside just talking about it. And to me, that's sort of the same mechanism as judgment. It's like you're scared to do. You don't have the capacity within you to do something, and so you sort of stand on the outside and like tell other people how to do it, and it creates this system. Have
you just described all of social media?
There are a lot of things in the country. I think.
I mean, that was an overgeneralization, but yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's part of
or like 99% of politics, like where the rest of us just argue about everything and have really no role in it at all.
I mean, religion really does function that way in a lot of ways.
The hope would be for the hope would be for religion that we would actually have a personal experience that we're walking through.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That you're actually doing it, experiencing it, feeling it.
You know, but like I feel like a lot of times with politics, we just sit back and watch.
Sure.
And then we argue.
Yeah.
And we really have nothing literally invested in these people doing these things, but we're all experts because we have a TV or a computer that we can watch them talk about stuff, and then we're enlightened. I mean, but you're right. I mean, it's kind of like it's all on the same scale like with religion,
or maybe like a politician that like is able to sort of pile up this like capital that they can throw on someone to make them seem deemed less in the eyes of the public, and so. Everyone starts storing up these like this ammunition that they can throw on other people. And that's kind of on a higher level, like, public politics. But that happens on sort of a more day-to-day level too. It's, I'm just going to store up these things that I can throw out at you.
Is it hard for politicians if they have tiny hands to do that? Or is it just like there's lots of little things they have to
there are
lob.
a lot of politicians that do that, not just little hands, but
yeah. But it's just extra effort because whatever you're lobbing and grabbing out of this bucket of nastiness you're throwing at somebody else, you have to do twice as much work because your hands are tiny.
Yeah, and I also want to retract my teacher joke because
it's too late.
Been watching The Wire and. season 4 is all about the teachers, and you just see how crummy it is to be a teacher. Like you just have everything in the world going against you. So that was just a goof.
I mean, much like the same
Please
thing.
don't judge me for that.
No, it's good. I mean, you could say that.
I really do respect teachers. I
had,
friends
and this is not related, but related at the same time, because I had an experience where I was working on our website for the show and ran into some issues with our hosting folks, which I will not name who hosts us, because they were really honestly trying to help.
Yeah.
But the lower level support people ended up screwing everything up. Essentially to where I was, over a 1.5 day period, watched the entire season of Orange is the New Black while dealing with support, and then waiting on them to fix stuff, and then dealing with them again, waiting to fix up. So, for like what you were saying is, I really have learned from that show that I really just don't want to be in prison.
Yeah.
Lesson learned.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's not.
I don't even think I could survive in a women's prison.
But
I'm just that weak.
But to further sort of like, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, the teacher thing. This really is something that's been interesting to me, though, because I found that I was a religious studies major in undergrad, and I found that there were many, maybe the majority of religious studies scholars with whom I studied really had no like import at all. They had no experience or very little experience in what they were talking about. It was mostly from like research. I mean, very well read. I mean, they're wonderful scholars. But had not actually like stepped into a certain religion that they were talking about, whether it be, like new religious movements, or, I mean, we talked about like ancient Christianity and I mean, you can't step into ancient Christianity, but Christianity in general, or Judaism or Islam, but I think the one that really gets me is Buddhism, because people will talk, it's always, I shouldn't say always, overgeneralization, but it tends to be like an older white man that's talking about Buddhism. I don't know why that's a thing. When I was looking,
or is that just Carborough?
No. When I was looking at grad programs in religion, many of these grad programs, for some reason, I don't know, people are going to go like Google it now. Maybe it's changed since this was years ago, but it just always seemed to be a guy that is not obviously not practicing Buddhism, that has like devoted his life to studying, to reading books about Buddhism, and then like, having students in there and talking about it for hours on end.
Because typically those guys always are kind of balding but have a ponytail.
Yes.
And and flowy pants.
Like Tim Robbins from High Fidelity.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I've run into many of those around the Carborough area.
I'm going to listen to world music and like cook Thai food
have
for
beads
you.
around my neck and act very enlightened.
I sound very judgmental right now.
But we're proving a point.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The whole point of that was to say, I think that in Judgment for Christians, we get so focused on kind of bringing people down or controlling people through these
fixing people.
Yeah, that
would be the fake virtuous excuse.
Right. Like, yeah, I'm trying to make it better. Like, I want you to live your best life or something like that.
Your best life now.
And we just totally like miss what, we miss out on life because we're so focused on other people's stuff.
Well, I will point. First of all, before we go, I just want to point out the general irony of what we're doing here. That we're judging the judgmental.
We're judging the judges.
Yeah,
judging the judges.
So Judge
Reinhold.
It's good times to Judge Reinhold. It made me think of favorite Judge Reinhold movie.
I could probably only think of like one or two. The Santa Claus.
I only know two. Would be Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh yeah, Beverly Hills Cop.
Well, that's right. I think he was in all of those. And then, do you remember Vice Versa?
No, I don't remember.
It was him and Fred Savage like switching places. This came like after bit. Yeah, it came after that. So like it was. This is like the someone trying to capitalize on a good idea from somebody else, and then being like, hey, let's switch places with
This will be great.
Hey, let's get the kid from the Wonder Years and the guy from whatever movies Judge Reinhold was in and put him in there. But I loved it when I was like 12.
Yeah. I just love that his first name is Judge.
I think, but there's like so many of those movies from the 80s when you return to and like the shine is not there anymore.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's lost a lot of luster, or I was just really a dumb kid, which is also probably true.
But we are judging the judgers.
We are. I mean, we're being critical. But, I don't know. There's 80s movies that made it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thinking of Goonies.
Yes.
That one still lives on.
That's a great one.
Which I'm really sad that they've talked about actually making a new one.
What? No.
Yeah,
Stop ruining my childhood.
Richard
please.
Donner said he's on board, and they've got most of the original cast coming back as the parents.
Well, I don't know. Those tend to be a little bit better, but
Nah.
I'm sorry. The new Ghostbusters. I mean, they've already ruined Transformers. Now they've got the new Ghostbusters.
I don't know. I'm holding out for that one being good because they're all pretty. The 4 ladies in it are funny.
I do not like Melissa McCarthy. I don't get her. I don't know. I like my humor a little more clever than her. I do like Kristen Wiig though.
Are you pulling it? This is like
you
just pulled back in Gilmore Girls. We talked about that earlier.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, but she wasn't like doing her thing. That was like acting. What she's doing now is, I don't know. It's going to be like judgment upon judgment.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We'll see.
There are probably a ton of.
We'll see. I mean, there's like, I feel like we're actually like approaching a whole movie, which again, we're judging about this and we're steering so far away from Christians at this point. It's which is probably good. I feel like this is going to be a very disappointing summer for movies.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't have high expectations.
Well, it just seems now that movies are remakes or just like
because
kind of
we've run out of
regurgitated
good ideas. Yeah.
Well, and I think too that Hollywood doesn't want to take risk on. They don't want to risk money
that's very true.
on things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So and there's like the global market to think of. But
I mean that was the whole thing that again like they had the whole Warcraft movie.
Yeah.
Which like watching the previews, I'm like I actually lost interest. And
in the preview.
Okay. One of my favorite things in the world. Actually, I love watching previews more than actually watching movies.
Yeah.
Because I think there's an art to it.
Yeah.
And that one I got bored within like the first 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Which doesn't
you knew it was coming.
I'm kind of. I've never played Warcraft for more than like a minute or two with people that were crazy that wanted me to play Warcraft with them. And I was like, this is just not good. But that movie did horrible here, but it did huge in China because apparently I'm going to just judge the Chinese for their taste in movies. I don't know. I don't know.
Or there are more people in China that play Warcraft and
that could be true.
Have kind of bought into the storyline in the world.
Maybe there's political undertones that made them feel good about ogres. I'm giving way too much credit because the movie looked horrible.
Yeah.
We were trying to pull something out of our rear ends for that one, but
these are just case studies in like how to judge.
It is. So yes, if anybody really wants to know how to judge, you can just find us on the website, snarkyfaith.com. We will educate you. We can be coaches. Judgmental coaches. But we are a show called Snarky Faith, so you should halfway expect some of that. No, but okay, so I have no idea how to run back to where we were in the first mile of the trail. But no, but I think that a lot of this, and even like this story, because I will just say, like we'd prepped to do this, I think this episode like a week or so ago. And then I had a really crappy week and was like, Ben, I don't have the right headspace to do this. And Ben was gracious enough to allow me not to do the show because I don't think. I mean, I just sat at home and watched The Wire. So. I think I can be a fun crusty, but when I'm not a fun crusty, it's just not really fun to listen to. Like when I'm just crusty.
Yeah.
Like old man, salty. Yeah.
Yeah. Curmudgeon.
And that would
get off my lawn.
That would have I was Clint Eastwood from
Gran Turismo.
Oh yes, I was going to say El Camino. Wrong car. But yeah, from that
would have been much more lackluster. Like I'm gonna get.
I want to watch a movie called El Camino. Yeah.
I'm sure there is one out there.
Well, it is. I mean, my wife and I have been watching through My Name Is Earl.
Yeah.
And the El Camino, it plays a role in that. I always thought that was an interesting car. I had neighbors that had one growing up.
Speaking of summer movies, can I bring up an X-Men quote allusion?
Yes, please. I like how you're so polite to ask.
I actually kind of enjoyed that movie. I thought it was
the new one
fairly well done until the end.
Apocalypse?
Yes.
Okay, don't tell the end.
Yeah, I'm not going to, no spoilers, don't worry.
I knew too many spoiler people that there's times where I've wanted to murder them.
And this is actually, I think, a line from the trailer. So there's like no spoiler in this.
Okay.
And he says it in the first like probably 15 minutes in the movie.
Okay.
But he's just sort of scanning through and seeing what the world is like now.
Who is he?
Apocalypse.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I should specify. And
you've already said too much.
Apocalypse is in the movie Age of Apocalypse, just so you know. Yeah, sorry
Makes so
to
much
ruin
sense.
that for you.
It is. That was a twist. That was like a M. Night Shyamalan type twist.
But he sees, the kind of the Cold War and politics at the time and all the like sort of positioning, and he says these are all like weapons and systems of the weak. And he's like, I'm going to bring all of these systems down so that we can show our true strength. And I was just sitting there thinking, and I'm reading a book on Nietzsche right now, which is probably why my brain's like going to that. But I'm like, man, that is like Nietzsche to the core right there.
So he's a good guy in the movie. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. I don't know if like killing people is the way to get there, but maybe
he's got some good ideas.
I don't know if Nietzsche would have said that either. But I'm just gonna hit that
sarcasm.
That was good. Yeah, that was way over. Yeah.
I don't know. I think of that, which it really ticks me off that could be applied to strands of Christianity, and that there is another way. Mm-hmm. There's another way to kind of live into, and experience Christianity, the Christian traditions, than this sort of like trying to control the world through judgment and through being judgmental. And I think that might be what the Pope is like getting at. That there's something else. That there's this quote in this article about what Pope Francis has said, that people who judge others without working on themselves are hypocrites. And unlike God's judgment, he added, theirs lacks mercy. And I think that's really important. It's that, because that's one thing that kind of bugs me about talking about like tolerance and judgment and like love and stuff like that. It gets very like wishy-washy and convoluted. I'm like, I don't know exactly what we're talking about like doing, other than not saying things to other people.
Sure.
And I think that like hits at the core right there. It's not that people aren't expected to kind of look around their world and say, this person beating on this other person is not right. It's because I want to, there are some things out there that are really crummy. And I'm not saying like the LGBT community and we need to go out and retaliate or something crazy like that. That you've heard some sermons lately, apparently, that have been saying that.
Retaliate against what would be always my question. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like exactly. When people say stuff like that, you're like, I'm sorry, what have they done?
Yeah, I have no idea what that's talking about. Yeah. But I mean, just, and again, I keep going back to The Wire, but just seeing there are so many like broken things in our world that I'm not okay with. And it, every time I see this or like hear these stories, I'm like, man, we got to do something. I can't just sit around and be like, well, that's not right. And just call it out or talk about it. We got to do something about it. And so I think, you can have that sort of being able to look at your world and say, well, this is not good. This is like broken or something. But then with mercy and, I've experienced some things recently where it's interesting to see people also motivated to really want to help and serve people, but they'll also jump on these like judgments, like, working with, and just working in healthcare in general and in mental health in different places. It's interesting to see people want to help, but then to say like, this person has done this and that is just sick. And, I mean, even in that, I'm not okay with it. I'm not okay with some of the things people have done in their lives. I still want them to get better. I still want more for them than to just say that person should go to prison. That person should be, like killed or something like that.
You're right. I mean, I feel like that, it just exactly how you describe that, I feel like strikes at the heart of Christianity. The way it's supposed to be, meaning that redemption is always possible. Mm-hmm. That hope is always possible, not that judgment is always possible. Because I feel like that ends up being like this knee-jerk reaction, especially with stuff that happens in Orlando. You get a bunch of loudmouth, just blowhard, graceless Christian pastors that come out and say stuff where, especially in times of tragedy, keep your agenda away. Mm-hmm. Just shut up and let people mourn and deal with the horrific nature of what happens.
Right.
And let us not interject into this, that some sort of agenda that we always need to keep going. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that ends up being this huge tone-deaf nature that I feel like so many Christians have fallen into. Mm-hmm. That we, so this happens to be about sin, or this happens to be about insert political issue.
Yeah.
Whereas we are called to have grace. We are called to mourn with others. We are called to cry with others. We are called to be there to help comfort those that are hurting. And I think that thing that you're speaking of, this idea that, which I think is core to all of this, is that somehow God is not done with people. That's what kills me about the capital punishment in situations, to where, which is a weird thing that many conservative Christians have latched onto. That we're, again, I mean, this is nothing new. That we want to save the unborn babies, but we're totally fine with killing people on the other end. And I do, like, I just feel like that, If we allow whatever judgment exists in the world to just kind of be in God's hands, and that we should never give up hope in people, that we should never give up hope in folks' stories, because we've not walked a mile in their shoes, we've not been through their background, and things in life are more complicated than we like to look at.
And I think, you're hitting like right at what I'm thinking, that I heard once, I think it was Derrida or someone said that you can only, you can only forgive like unforgivable things. And what he's kind of saying, sorry, this is probably going like way outside of, I'm like way out in abstract left field right now. But,
we've been there all show, so just feel comfortable.
But I don't know, he sort of on a like political level, or getting to like the death penalty, the idea is that in killing someone, you're saying like you're not welcome anymore. That's like it. Yeah. And I think even in pushing this sort of like judgment in the pulpit, and really like getting into people's heads, we have nothing more to do with like this type of person.
Yeah.
And then of course you get people who go out and say, okay, well, I'm going to shoot a bunch of people. Yeah. Because you have, from the pulpit, you've said, that's it. Like, this person is unforgivable. Yeah. There's there's this huge gap between you and them, and you have nothing more to do with them. Which is like completely opposite, I think, from, forgiveness is at the center, I think, at least in certain strands of Christianity. I think most of Christianity, forgiveness is like at the center of what we believe.
It should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it should be.
And killing someone or doing violence is the opposite. It's like the total other end of forgiveness. Because when you kill someone, you're saying, that's it. Like, I'm done with you.
Like, I'm choosing to end their process in life.
Right, absolutely. Like, I have nothing, there's nothing more we can do together.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't compute to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's hard, because I feel like that again, and I mean, this isn't anything new. I think that's adding to the argument within this, but I think it still needs to be said in the midst of it that there are things that we do, like there are certain pet sins or pet atrocities that I think Christians will go out, like that, this is bad, and so he needs to be put to death. But we don't also think about like the subtle ways that our like American lifestyle like kills other people.
Yeah.
Or makes other people's lives hell, like in third world countries, to where our dependence on certain things end up just killing a lifestyle of countries.
Yeah.
Or people, like our greed, our hunger, our need for more and more and more. And we're fine with those because we don't necessarily, because again, in certain situations, we don't see the blood on our hands from where our consumerism has led us. But in other situations, because it's more obvious, gun equals death equals this guy needing to be put to death. Like, that's simpler math.
Yeah. And even in our country, I think just complacency towards obvious problems like racism.
Yeah.
That still exists. That, we just kind of either turn a blind eye, or we tend to kind of cover over things rather than saying like, okay, maybe this is a problem. Because I think that's the step at which you look at yourself and say, well, maybe I'm part of this problem. I think so many people want to say, well, I don't do that. Like, I'm not a racist. I don't hate, African Americans or something like that, without realizing that a lot of things we do in life are still kind of hateful towards people. It's just sort of
exclusionary.
Yeah. It's complacency and just not feeling like we have anything to do to help anyone else.
Sure.
And just not even trying to like understand or see the problems, because they're definitely there. I mean, they're there in our communities all over the place. In cities, it tends to be on a kind of bigger scale, but even, out in the boondocks where I grew up in Chicken Coopville. No, I'm
That's
serious
true.
though.
No,
I mean,
you're right. Yeah, I mean,
there is a smaller community of African Americans where I grew up, but good gracious, they were feeling the hate. I mean, it's probably not quite as it was more overt in my community. I grew up, in my middle school. I remember one day, like, someone was handing out business cards for the KKK to people in my class, and I'm like, really? Because I don't know. I just could not.
that seems really highbrow for the KKK.
Oh, handing out business cards.
Yeah,
I know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
they've gone upscale.
But I mean, even though there's just kind of like a handful of people around, there's still just a lot of problems, and we kind of act like we're in the New South or we're like in a new age where racism doesn't exist. But
it's
all over the place.
I mean, I grew up in like suburbs of Atlanta and like in white neighborhoods and all this other kind of stuff, and it totally happened. Like one of my good friends growing up lived in our neighborhood, had a single mom. He was African American, was just a great person, but it happened all the time to where it wasn't necessarily people saying they were excluding him because of the color of his skin, but they would exclude him because of what he wore. When we were like elementary school, because like of what he played, what kind of game system, but it was, I mean, it was all upper crust ways, or more palatable ways to be able to exclude somebody without using certain words or acting like the Deep South stereotypical. But it's the same thing. Like the same things happened. We just did it in more of a, for lack of a better word, a whitewashed way. You know what I mean? But a way that seemed more palatable to culture.
And I think people who just kind of throw out excuses like, well, the parents should do a better job. Yeah. Or, if the families were stronger and things like that. I mean, for one, I've known people in those communities that whoever's the caregiver is like the strongest person you've ever met.
Yeah.
They're doing everything they can. And two, there's so many things coming at people at once. I mean, we're not living under like, if you do one thing or make one choice, that's going to end up having this effect. I mean, you've got things coming at you from all sides, especially in like poorer communities that are weighing down on you. And I mean, it's like very, very rare that someone can fight up against that.
Well, I mean, and again, like I think I said earlier, but I mean, what you're saying again is I feel like emphasizing this, especially when people come from a place of judgment. I feel like the math in their heads when they judge other people is very, very simple.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like A plus B equals C and that's it.
Right.
If they would, well, why don't they do this? I mean, I've heard so many people like, well, I mean, education's free in this country. Why doesn't everybody hop on that? I mean, it's, and not understanding everything is so much more complicated. And people also not understanding what it's like to be in a position of privilege. And denying that they have had privilege because I've worked just as hard as everybody else, type of a bunch of BS that people like to throw at folks. And I think that when like circling back to all the stuff that happened in Orlando, I mean, if I look at the character and the nature of Christ, I think that he would be in those places with those folks that are hurting and comforting them and weeping with them and mourning with them and feeling the loss with them. And I do not think, and that I guess that's what makes me sick when I see people answer all of these answer atrocities from like a position of kind of just being able to say like, oh, I'm going to sum it up really easily. This was terrorism. This was this was that. And not necessarily living into the nuanced nature of wait, there was lives that ended. There were stories that were cut short early. And that will never, that will never continue. There were families that were a part of those people's lives that don't have that, and it's a very, very, very nuanced and complicated and heartbreaking and gut-wrenching situation. And we offer simple answers. I mean, I want to slap people around and just be like, just turn off the microphone, just be quiet, stop typing, get off social media. It's one of those things, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, just shut the hell up. And let other people mourn and keep your commentary away from the situation, and part of like that article that we were like referencing too about Pope Francis, and this comes from like I'll butcher the name because that's just what I do, not on purpose, but it's Bishop is it Carcano from the United Methodist Church speaking about the shooting, saying and I thought this is quite beautiful. Carcano. Are we not contributing to the kind of thinking that promotes doing harm to these brothers and sisters, our children, the sacred children of God. And I think we begin to lose the fact that we see people, and Christians lose this, that we are all image bearers of God, that we are all made in God's image. And I think that once we lose that, once we get onto this side that like, I have God, you don't, I'm on the winning team, you're on the losing team, we make these really, really simple, we draw these simple lines. Something as simple as like kindergartners do. Yeah. And that logic is somehow, we don't ever grow out of this a lot, and as humans a lot of times, to where, we're the winners, you're the losers, we're the enlightened, you're the stupid, and in these kind of situations, and not realizing that somehow I think God is weeping at our actions. God is weeping at our ignorance. God is weeping at our callous nature when we begin to step into situations and do more harm than good. And I guess that's the biggest part of what we're getting at with judging, is that when you're sitting in a position of judgment, you are not getting down to try to fix something or help something or offer a hand or even just be able to sit there with somebody while they mourn. When you're standing in a position of judgment, you're standing away from something. You were staying clean from a situation. You were standing outside of just the natural raw nerve of life that people are going through, and just speaking context into it in a very just pious and hateful way. And I think that Christ calls us to be in the nitty-gritty of life, to be in there with people, to suffer with people, to help people. I don't know.
It's like going to the gas station to get a plate of spaghetti.
You've been waiting on that one.
I have been. I've been sitting.
So yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why would you go to the gas station for a spaghetti special?
I wanted it.
I mean, you're slumming it at that point.
Well, I mean, if it's cup of noodles.
Well, that's not spaghetti. It's ramen.
It's not, which isn't even really pasta. I'm not even sure what that is.
Cracker, right?
It is. You're right. It's kind of like
cracker.
saltine crackers.
Yeah.
2 crackers on the radio right now, talking about. No, but it reminds me. I remember that my son still brings this up. We pulled into a gas station. It was somewhere, and I think it was close to North Carolina Beach. But they were running a special on ribs in a gas station.
Oh goodness!
Which
why?
I'm a person, and again,
I've seen pot roast in a gas station before. I'm like, yeah. It's like, where do you get this idea from?
Or I've seen gas stations that were selling seafood that were nowhere near the sea, and you're just
they bought it out of the back of a van, like an igloo cooler in the back of a van
that was probably sitting unair conditioned for a week before they bought it. But I remember he'll bring that up just about like the ribs special that you could buy some ribs at a gas station, because when he was younger, he was like, "Ooh, I like ribs," and I'm like, "No, never buy quality food from a gas station.
No,
that's just it's never going to work well."
Ugh.
I mean, it's just like you just lower your expectations if you're going for gas station food.
Yeah.
Like lower expectations, up your indigestion. Down? No? Okay. I don't know.
Sorry.
I don't know. No, that wasn't very good.
I just had a brain like melt when you said that.
Oh, but okay. It was brain indigestion. No, but I think that like, and again, like as we're kind of we're walking very slowly. I think we've done like the roundabout method. Which
Always.
Is kind of I found this. This is kind of and you can tell me if I'm wrong.
It's a
about
walkabout.
This is the difference between like Apple Maps and Google Maps.
Okay.
Because I have many Apple devices. I love my iPhone and my MacBook Pro and everything else like that too. But I will tell you, Apple Maps has like steered me wrong more often than not when you're off like on main roads on stuff. I've been led in circles which is sad because I'm kind of just going exactly where my phone's telling me to go, and I'm knowing that's wrong. I'm like, I physically
it hasn't worked yet. But it might just work.
I do. I hold out to that. I was like, well, maybe it knows something I don't know.
Yeah.
But every sense of good judgment within me is telling me you're going the wrong direction. As it leads me like into someone's driveway, and I'm not anywhere near where I'm going.
So in my hometown, I went down a gravel road. And it turned into dirt road. And then it turned into, there was no longer a road, just like tire tracks through grass.
Yeah.
And I'm like 17 at this point. I'm like, why not? So I just keep going. I had to ford a river with my car. I mean, it's not a river, I guess, like a creek.
Still, any kind of river crossing is probably not
But it was part of the road, though. That's what was so
Wait, were you
wild.
following GPS, or this is just you?
No. This was pre-GPS. This
okay.
was before GPS.
Okay.
But it turned back into a road.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
I like fording rivers. I don't know if I like fording it in my vehicles, but
there wasn't much of an analogy.
So yeah, so I'm trying to say like that weak analogy that I had is kind of we've taken the roundabout, the long road to get to the point, and we haven't even really touched this other article. But I'm just going to hit a few things from this. This is "Why Are Christians So Judgmental" by Michael Hidalgo from like Relevant magazine. Which again, like I've actually hung out with Michael before, and not that he would ever remember it. He taught a class, and then I talked to him a bunch afterwards. Super interesting guy. Has a big heart for reconciliation and all of this. Because typically I'm not the biggest Relevant magazine fan because I'm judgmental in the midst of it. Because I feel like it's kind of just like, I don't know, like Christians polishing each other's knobs kind of a thing. Like where it's like, we're all like, yeah.
It's like culture light.
Yeah. It's kind of like, yeah, we'll be edgy within a non-edgy like spectrum.
Yeah, we'll talk about like one semi-relevant album and then throw out like a ton of Christian-y.
Yeah, like we'll talk about getting close to the edge, and that's as close as we'll get, and then we run way back to safety type of a situation.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
don't think Relevant Magazine cares about our podcast. So.
No.
I don't think we're going to alienate it.
Relevant in name only type of a situation. No, but I do. I really like his heart. And so I think that like a lot of this whole article that he's going through was really, it came about through a conversation he had with a girl that had come to his church. It had been like, he refers to her as a girl. I'm assuming it's a young woman. That had, been away from the church for 10 years and had stayed away because she felt like everybody was judgmental within churches, which, what I'm going to tell you is it's pretty much true.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to
where you been?
Yeah. Our whole thing in this isn't saying, hey, culture, you're wrong. Churches aren't judgmental. Run back. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Our whole purpose is the fact that I think that the core of Christianity does not call us to be there. Now, institutionalized wise, I feel like there's very much there. It's a very big breeding ground for not being safe, not being transparent, not being real and authentic,
not being
and
understanding.
Yeah. Okay, so all that off. That's like my asterisk that's at the bottom of the page.
You've been out drinking Folgers, haven't you?
Oh, yes, I have, and I need a second cup. But because I'm a glutton for punishment, apparently. I'm circling back where this is like, that's the gas station coffee that we're actually drinking right now. It
all connects.
Which I never, I would rather eat the gas station spaghetti than I would drink the gas station coffee, but we're stuck in the middle of that. No, but like, I mean, really the heart of what he's talking about is that ultimately we, as followers of Christ, we are called to not judge. We're called to be these things that are called ministers of reconciliation. We are called to be people that carry out this idea of healing the world, being a part of redemption, a part of hope, and a part of painting a picture that the world can be better, not us saying that the world sucks. End of story. You know what I mean? And I feel like we become these people that kind of become these harbingers of doom. And just one thing that I love that he was saying here, and he says here, like towards the like middle end of the article, he says, to be clear, he speaks of violence. He says love is violent. However, the violence of love is far different than the violence that we dole out to one another every day. The violence of love is that when we is what we see on the cross. Like when we begin to see that, and the reason that the cross is like the center point of how we talk about who Jesus is, what he came to do, this idea of sacrificial love in the face of people that are condemning you, in the face of people that are killing you, in the face of people that are spitting and tearing you down. It's this idea that you continue just to move forward in that kind of sacrificial love. And I think that ethic has been lost in a lot of American Christianity. And I feel like when you lose that sacrificial love, you've kind of like thrown the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, I think it happens that way because a lot of Christians will say that you need to do that.
Yep.
Instead of doing it themselves.
Which is, again, I think, circling back as we're like trying to finish up here, that was one of the points the Pope had said is like that we really just need to start going back to looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
Before we speak and do everything
man
else.
Man in the mirror.
It is.
Michael Jackson reference.
Yeah.
You like that?
About the man in the mirror. I don't know. That was really bad. Sorry.
Are you going to have to pay a royalty for that?
I think as long as you're like under like 3 seconds.
Okay.
And also I cannot carry a tune. So there's no way they're going to trace this back to me. And they'll just say, why would we charge him? He actually just made more of an ass out of himself than actually Michael Jackson in the midst. He did.
Singing it.
He is. We have drug ourselves into the dirt of his. No, but I think that, as we start to get to the end of this broadcast, just a reminder that you can also catch us on podcast, www.snarkyfaith.com. And just a reminder that all we're trying to do here is just kind of course correct the focus of the ugly head of American Christianity in the midst of it. Final thoughts, Ben?
No, that's good.
Okay.
No more analogies.
No more. Okay. Until next time.
Yeah, there will be one.
Yeah. So just a reminder, you can catch us on our website. We love hearing feedback. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter. Just look up Snarky Faith. If you love us that much, hop on over to iTunes and write a review because we love hearing from you guys. 5 stars is better than 1 star, but we'll take any kind of review possible. And that is all that we have this week. And just wanted to say, hey, thanks for hanging with us. Thanks for listening to us. And that's all we got. And we will catch you again next week. We're out of here.
WCOM is listener-supported community radio, and Snarky Faith is only possible through our sponsors. Aqueduct Conference Centre was established in 1978 as a peaceful destination for small group meetings, special events, conferences, retreats, and weddings. For more information, go to www.aqueductcc.com. We are also sponsored by Lumen. Lumen, a spiritual community of seekers, sojourners, question askers, doubters, and skeptics, is a collective of fellow travelers that embrace the truth that all life is sacred, hope is real, and tomorrow can be better than today. All are welcome. You can find more information at www.lumencommunities.com.